Hello friends! Today we are going to talk about parenting trauma-exposed children. I am Brooke Fremouw. I am an adoptive mom to 11 beautiful children, and I help calm the chaos in your hearts and in homes as it regards to adoptive parenting. So if that's something that you're in need of, please reach out to me. I would love to spend 45 minutes talking to you about the ways in which trauma has impacted your household, and we can get it all put back together and get things on the right path. So this is Penzie. Sometimes as adoptive moms, especially when you have so many kids, the only quiet place you can find is your bedroom. So welcome to my bedroom today. Let's go ahead and jump into this and get started, okay? Parenting children with trauma. There are three things that are common presentations of children who've been exposed to trauma. Now, whether you're a foster parent or whether you're an adoptive parent, you have a child that is trauma exposed, even if you have a child that was given to you at birth. Okay, so just the separation from a biological mom in the womb is a trauma. And if you've adopted if you adopted a child that wasn't given to you directly from birth, you certainly have a child that has been exposed to trauma. If your child was ever removed from their biological family, I can tell you the trauma runs deep. So what does it look like? The trauma looks like their basis of comparison is completely different than yours and mine. If you grew up in a stable home environment, your child did not have that same basis of comparison, okay? So when they are angry and they are afraid and they are frustrated, it is going to show up in completely different ways. The dysfunction that led them to being removed from their house is normalized, right? So they see yelling, they see kicking, they see punching, they see numbing out with alcohol, numbing out with drugs, right? They see toxic relationships where conflict resolution looks like intense physical battles, intense fights where dishes are being broken and plates are being broken and police officers are being called, holes punched in walls. And then they come to your house where none of that happens. So when they're angry and they're upset and they raise the game and they elevate their behaviors, can you understand why? Even their elevated behaviors are nothing compared to the behaviors that they were exposed to, right? So we can't expect them to draw off of the current situation when the past situation was so extreme. Another thing that you'll notice with trauma-exposed kids is that their stress threshold is less. If you have seen my video on resilience, parenting with resilience, you will have been taught about our threshold of tolerance. So what we have is we have like a normal threshold here in which your day runs between some highs and lows, right? Maybe the washing machine didn't quite work right, so that created frustration and pushed you to the top, but you still stayed composed, right? And so anything that's higher than the threshold of tolerance is going to be aggressive behaviors. And anything that's lower than that threshold of tolerance is going to be depressive behaviors, suicidal thoughts, not able to get out of bed. And so you and I have a threshold of tolerance like this, and our children have a threshold of tolerance like this, okay? When they've been exposed to extreme stressors on a continual basis, their bodies physiologically cannot digest out their stress hormones. So that's going to be the cortisols, it's going to be insulin, it's going to be adrenaline, hormones that are put into them, okay? And all of that rushes into their brains and it changes their body's physiology. So instead of having a threshold of tolerance like this, theirs is like this. And what does it look like? It looks like you asking your child to shut off the TV and come to dinner and them exploding in a behavior. It looks like your child being asked to do a chore and the child completely freaking out. It looks like you coming up behind your child while they're coloring and putting your hand on their back and them, don't touch me, being highly sensitive. Ooh. Highly sensitive and moody, right? So they're going to have either behaviors that cause them to withdraw, the flight, or they're going to have behaviors that cause them to accelerate and mitigate their circumstances, which is going to be the fight mechanism. And either way, it's going to be more highly sensitized than a child that wasn't trauma exposed. The third thing is that their trust is less, right? So this child has come from a biological circumstance that was not stable. And the people that they felt like they should be able to trust the most to be there and provide for them, ultimately, it didn't work out. And that child has learned that they can't depend on any one person to meet their needs fully and completely. Now they're put into your care, they're put into your home, and you are telling them that you are trustworthy. They don't believe you, and you can tell because they have a couple different responses, right? One of their responses would be to get you before you can get them. That's going to be that aggressive response where every time the child feels vulnerable and starts to feel attached, they actually kick and push you away. It's called a push-pull reflex. I need love, I need affection, I need you to care for me, but wait a minute, that reminds me that I have something to lose. So I'm going to push you away as much as I'm going to pull you close, okay? Another way that that trust can look is simply putting a wall between you and never wanting to pull you close. So they distance you. So if they never need you, they never let you in, then they have no risk of loss, right? The last way that that trust can look very different, and a lot of people don't see it as a lack of trust, but it is. It's them needing so much that they suck and suck and suck like a black hole. They can't get enough. You can't give them enough because this child needs to know that you are there every single minute, because if you're not there and within their control, within their manipulative tactics, then it means they could lose you. You could be gone. So literally they're going to suck the life out of you in order to try and control the relationship. So now that we've talked about 3 ways that that child is going to present differently because of their traumatic background, let's take a look at some ways that we can actually help. I'm telling you, it's one thing to identify it and a whole nother thing to take it on, right? And to say, okay, what do we do about it? Let's talk about that. For the fact that their basis of comparison is completely fundamentally different, we have to create a new normal, right? We have to create a new normal. We have to show them a new expectation, and we have to be able to normalize something different. This is something that takes substantial time, but it also needs to be spoken to, right? We actually need to address what's going on that subconscious level so that they can learn to have cause and effect correlation. So if little Johnny is angry and little Johnny punches the wall in his anger, what we want to do is say, I see that you are angry, right? I see that you're angry. Give him some words. Are you angry, Johnny? Try and get him to verbalize his anger. And then we want to say, when you are angry, instead of punching a wall, we want to punch a pillow, right? This is an appropriate outlet for anger. This is an inappropriate outlet for anger. And we can recognize, Johnny, did you see people punch walls before? Yeah. Did that end well for them? No, it hurts your hand. It hurts the wall. The room isn't pretty anymore. And really help them to work through the pros and cons of the choices that they're making. Also, Dr. Phil, he says the greatest predictor of future behavior is recent relevant past behavior. So if the child's recent relevant is aggression, then the future is probably going to be aggression, right? So what we need to do is create a different recent relevant so that your child can stay neutralized and not have the same outcomes, okay? We want to expand their threshold of tolerance for stress. So as we said, it's been shrunk down. And once it's been shrunk down, how do we get it to go back up? Well, there's a couple things we can do. There's internal factors. We've talked about the digestion of all of these chemicals and hormones that the body has been pushed full of due to their stress response, right? That creates that fight or flight. And what we want to do is teach them self-regulation skills so that they are able to stop themselves from getting to that out of control space. And so there are breathing techniques that can be done. There are physical ways of sitting and manipulating their hands and feet that help them to be able to self-regulate their bodies. So that's one thing that we want to do. The other would be environmental. So you have an environment that pushes down on your threshold. I can prove to you that that's true if you have a job, right? Your threshold of tolerance is very different at work than it is at home. You're stressed out from your environment, so it gets shortened down. So we can take a look at the environment and say, what is here that is causing triggered responses? What is here that's overstimulating? What is here that doesn't help, right? And that even as parents, one of the main things I do with my clients is teach them how to engage a child that's been trauma exposed in a way that doesn't immediately cause a stress response. So many things that our parents did for us that worked for us don't work for these children because their threshold is very, very different. So we have to take a different approach in the ways in which we engage. An example of that could be simply if a child has a hard time getting off of the TV because they're focused and they don't like to have that focus pulled away, we can give them warnings and prepare them for that transition that lies ahead. By just simply prompting them as to a change that's coming, they're able to regulate themselves and prepare and then not have that instinctual response. So that's one technique that is used, but certainly we give a lot of language that's I feel based language when we interact with our children. That's what I do with my clients and teach them how to phrase things in ways that are better received. Okay, lastly, for their trust being less, guys, we have to show up with consistency. And I know it's the hardest thing about parenting. It's hard to have follow through. It's hard to be consistent and match our words with our actions over and over and over and over. And yet it is the thing that our children need the most. They need to know that when we say I love you, that our actions are going to back I love you and that they're not going to be physical. They need to know that when we say I will always be here for you, that there won't be a threat when the child behaves poorly of that child being removed from the home, right? They need to know that when you say no, that you mean no, that that's not going to change in 20 minutes because you're worn down and tired. So now it's switched to a yes. Consistency between actions and behaviors and consistency in showing up for our child is the way that they learn that they truly can trust you, that they can relax, that they can digest out those chemicals and hormones that are in their body, and that they can adapt and move forward past their traumas and heal. I hope that these were insightful things for you, both in recognizing the ways that trauma shows up and in ways to combat those things that show up. Again, if there is something that I can do to help you with your family, I'm a certified trauma support coordinator, and I do work with families just like yours that are adoptive families and foster families where these children have traumatic backgrounds and they need an extra way of engaging. They need help in bonding and attaching. They need help in minimizing their behaviors and increasing their communication skills. If that is you, there is a link in the comments section where you can book a 45-minute free strategy call, and I would love to have a talk with you about your family dynamics and see if there's something we can do to help calm your heart and calm the chaos in your home. Thank you so much for your time, and may these tips help move you forward in your relationship with your child.